So today is special because today is Tuesday. And Tuesday, as we all know, is Thomas Sowell Tuesday. So I'm going to read a quote, which I think is especially relevant, from Dr. Sowell. Thomas Sowell, talking about the state of American education, once said, "The problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feeling." And what I find interesting is that as we look at, again, the status of American education, what's been going on within our public schools, what I find is that this is especially relevant because it seems like every time we get in a conversation about how do we improve the status of education, and we come forward with different facts, evidence, approaches, we get hit with a whole lot of feelings. So is the sort of arguments that we're seeing coming from the public school establishment, is that being reflected in what our kids are being taught within school?
I think we have 2 videos that might.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the videos Hamilton's got for us. All right, let's look at the first one.
Hi, I'm a queer teacher, and I 1000% do not support this bill. And yes, I do know what's in it. The bill in itself is just another way to stigmatize the LGBTQ+ community. Kids as young as 3 and 4 are actually aware of their gender identity, even if they don't have the language for it. Also very aware of who they like and who they don't like. Heterosexuality is pushed on our kids on a daily basis at a very young age. Media, through books, the first Disney movie that you saw. To say that pre-K through 3rd grade are not ready for such topics is actually internalized homophobia and transphobia. We're very much ready for these topics and are way more accepting than adults when it comes to discussing these topics. We can talk about gender assumptions, pronouns, all the things. And it is child development appropriate and age appropriate. It's literally created as just another means to other queer people. Basically say that us existing is not normal.
Okay.
Age appropriate.
It's age appropriate because it turns out that 3rd graders are far more accepting of these sorts of concepts. You know what 3rd graders are also far more accepting of? The concept of eating like 5 pounds of cotton candy in one setting, or the idea that unicorns exist, right? Those are some other things that 3rd graders are far more accepting of. But the idea that you would look at something like this, and this is saying like 3-year-olds, forget 3rd graders.
Not 3rd graders, it's 3-year-olds.
3-year-olds. It's like, well, 3-year-olds are very accepting of all these, because they're 3. Like, at what point do you look at this as a parent and go, wait a second, you don't get to sit here and discuss, like, they're very aware of what they like and don't like. Yeah, they don't like bedtime. Like this is the standard now for what we teach a 3-year-old is based off of what this person's perception is of what they like and don't like.
Well, the good news is that ideally somebody like that will not be in the public school system for much longer in the great state of Florida.
Well, I mean, it clearly if this is something where, again, it's this idea that they're, and here's what's kind of scary about this. You got to kind of look between the lines, right? It's not just they know who they like and they don't like. They're very aware of their gender identity. Okay, at 3 years old, if you're suggesting to children, because that's what part of this is, right? It's not just them relaying to a teacher what they like or they don't like. It's the teacher then coming alongside and reinforcing certain ideas to that child. And if she's suggesting as young as 3, I mean, you're telling me there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm sorry, I got to stop you right there. This person actually identifies as non-binary. So
sorry, my bad.
No, but like I first off, God bless libs of TikTok.
Yes.
Like for just collecting these videos that nobody is forcing the left to publish these things on TikTok, right? But they're doing it. And it's so amazing that like you continuously hear from other people on the left, this isn't happening. This is, culture war scaremongering from the right. This is, fake news, right-wing propaganda. It's not.
Yeah.
It's being willingly published by people on the left who are openly defending it.
Yeah.
And saying over and over again, we're proud that we're indoctrinating these 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds with, sex and gender ideologies.
Oh, and it's trans and homophobic.
If you disagree,
you're a bigot. You're a bigot, and that's why your child needs to be educated by this. Well, again,
because as far as this person is concerned, they're saying that from a very young age, heterosexuality is pushed on children, and it is. Let me just bring up another thing that is pushed on children at a very young age: Gravity.
I was literally about to say
Yes.
that.
Gravity is pushed on children at a young age. And how dare anybody at this table say that my child cannot fly? At 3 years old, they know that they can fly. They know that, gravity is just a social construct.
And they know they don't like people that tell them they can't fly or to take a nap.
That's
they don't
right.
like that
How
either.
How dare you, bigot?
Well, and that's really what this comes down to. It's this whole idea that and look, let's say you're someone that agrees, at least in part, with what this teacher is saying. The question ultimately is not whether or not you agree with this teacher or you disagree with this teacher. The question is it the teacher's role or responsibility
Yes, exactly.
to push this? And I would hope most parents would say, look, one way or the other, I don't want my heterosexual teacher talking about their, sexual preferences with my 3-year-old.
And that goes for heterosexual people too. I don't want any teacher, anyone in authority, talking to my child about sex of any sort, anything along those lines. It's none of their business. That is a private issue.
And let's be honest here. What they're doing is they're conflating two things, right? Because they're trying to make this all about this idea that, well, no, it's just about this is how I identify. And so that's critical for my identity and to be able to express that to children. And so I should be able to express this to children. And then you saw the statement, right? They want you to believe that, well, it's the cis normative or the heteronormative that's getting pushed on kids. And it's like, okay, wait a second. At what point is something a natural reflection of reality versus something that the moment you say trans, you're admitting that biologically it doesn't comport with psychologically the way you view yourself. And now you're introducing something to a young child, again, according to this teacher, as young as 3, you're introducing a concept to that child that those parents might not be comfortable with.
The bad thing about this is that at these very young ages, as parents and as the people who raise children, we are supposed to provide a stable environment for them to learn reality and how to interact with reality. And when you're taking something, just kind of pulling the rug out from under them and telling them that there is no fixed mark, everything is just fluid, it's whatever you feel, you're not giving them any stable environment. And then we wonder why children are having just catastrophic mental health issues. And
That's your fault. It's because you're a bigot. It's because you're not allowing this teacher to do this to your 3-year-old. You're a bigot, and so you're creating. I mean, that's the argument, right? We're the ones. Society has created this unwelcoming, in fact, oppressive environment where their particular identity or the way they self-identify, because it's not recognized in the same way that cisgender or heteronormative society is, therefore we're creating the conditions in which case. So if only your 3-year-old was exposed to this at an early age, then those conditions wouldn't exist, right? So their argument is we're the problem. And what's so fascinating about that is that every time they tell you this isn't being pushed on your kids, first of all, yes, it is. There's clear proof of it. Second of all, they absolutely believe it should be. Because how do you maintain a morally consistent and intellectually consistent position if you believe that the reason why kids that struggle with gender dysphoria or transphobia or whatever else commit suicides at higher rates or have other problems at higher rates? Well, then, of course, you also have to believe that the only way that you solve that is by inculcating it into their education at a very young age. And if you as the parent aren't willing to do that, then you should be compelled to by the state. I mean, am I wrong?
No, I think that you're bringing up an important point here because we were like laughing and joking and we were also kind of stunned seeing this earlier. But it's important to know that it's not just a laughing matter. It might have been a few years ago, but it's become an actual fight. As crazy as it sounds, it's become an actual fight. I cannot believe that we're actually debating this seriously and not just joking about it.
And we're called the science deniers.
Yeah.
And the reason that I bring this up is because, like, it's okay to, you kind of, part of you wants to just laugh at these things that you see on TikTok or Twitter, but it's no longer just a laughing matter. Like, the fact that piece of legislation in Florida that was passed recently that this teacher was complaining about, the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which, by the way, is not what it was called. The word gay doesn't even appear in the legislation once. And the whole entire legislation was about not being able to teach sex and gender identities to K through 3rd graders.
Yeah.
And I've argued with people online about this, and I remember one person said, well, your legislation that you're supporting is directly threatening the very existence of somebody like myself. And my response was, what part of teaching or of banning teaching K through third graders about sex and gender is a direct attack on your identity?
Yeah.
That is the most hyperbolic claim I've ever seen online, and that is a really high bar to clear.
Or wait a second, or it's telling. I'm not talking about for everybody in general that opposed the bill, but for that individual person, right? Because there's been Jack Posobiec got like banned from Twitter for a day or two because he used the term groomer. So when you tell me, for instance, hey, I disagree, I think we should talk about this and this is why. Okay, I disagree with you, we can have a conversation. When you tell me that this challenges my existence, that I have to have the ability to be able to discuss sex with your 9-year-old in public school, now I'm starting to question, okay, wait a second, why is that key to your identity?